Welcome to Can I Speak to Your Product Manager, the nitty gritty with your favorite PMs. I'm Kyle Kolich, Vice President of Product at Zora.
And I'm Lucas Weber, Director of Product Manager at Zora. Today, we're going to speak with Noah Manger. He is a Group Product Manager at Zapier. Welcome, Noah.
Hello. Thank you.
Great to have you. Okay, so I think this is where we get to know you a little bit, and we're going to play our usual game of ship it or skip it.
What do you want to do?
Let's do it.
No.
No. Maybe. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. It's a way to get to know you a little bit better. As a PM, you have to make decisions on, do I want to go with this product? Is it something I want to ship to market? Or do I want to skip it? It's not a really good idea. It maybe needs more iteration, more time on the design floor. But here's a couple ones. So with sober January over, and the March season's coming up, and got St. Patrick's Day coming up, and so there's an invention of a flask tie, so you can enjoy your favorite beverage with your favorite tie with a flask embedded in that tie. Which is something you would ship it or skip it?
I would skip it. I feel like flasks have been a solved problem. Plus, the added weight on your neck doesn't seem ideal to me. So maybe some health risks there. So yeah, I've got a flask I love. It's great. I would skip it.
All right, I agree with you. I think that's a little bit of an aggressive move, and plus it feels very bloated. And you're right. Probably neck support would be a problem. The second one, now it's you're hearing more and more of being grounded, being touch the earth, and makes you feel more, one with the planet. But it's very hard to do that in the concrete jungle of a city. So an inventor came up with a grass flip-flops that actually have grass you can grow in the flip-flop, and you can recreate the feeling of touching earth with these flip-flops. Would you ship it or skip?
I would ship it. That sounds great to me. I am a nerd. I like to be barefoot when I can. Being barefoot in the grass is a wonderful feeling. Questions about the maintenance of it. How do you keep that alive? For sure. But, I can imagine for at least one day, it would be a really pleasant experience.
Yeah. Especially, when you land I hear when you, jet lag is a jet lag reliever, being able to touch the earth, and then you just put these flip-flops on and it will get you halfway there.
You better don't run, because I would imagine that grass would go everywhere. No running in flip-flops.
Plus, if you have dogs, you might have a problem with that too. So, okay, one no, one yes. The third one. Now, this is an interesting one. It was from a Japanese inventor who loved tomatoes, but also loved to run. So it's called the Tomaton. It's a wearable robot that feeds you tomatoes. It's invented by a Japanese juice vendor, Kajomi. And the robot sits in a harness behind your head and pulls out tomatoes and puts them directly in your mouth as you run.
I would never use this, mostly because I hate running, though I do love tomatoes. But I do think that the TikTok videos that you would get out of it, of people spotting people in the wild, like with the Vision Pro, walking around doing weird stuff, eating tomatoes, would be worth it. So let's ship it.
Ship it? Okay, all right, yeah. I mean, I guess it for the clicks, maybe that's a way. It feels like it'd be a little hard to run tomato, but I guess if you're really in shape and love tomatoes, it works well.
Yeah. I mean, the key question I'd ask is, how many tomatoes as a runner would you be eating, honestly? How long are you running?
Like a marathon, right? It's
maybe
like
if it's a
competition,
marathon, but still.
It's like those eating competition people. They can test the running as well as do tomato eating.
There you go. Yeah, maybe. Just feels like a little bit overkill.
A little bit.
Not that much snacking going
now,
on.
The good thing is
running.
The next episode, we actually are going to interview Kajomi, and he's going to tell us a deep dive on his tomato intervention. So tune in next time.
Great. Look forward to it.
Powering up.
Power move.
So let's get into the nitty gritty day to day stuff. What's happening in the world of PM? So no, what's kind of top of mind as a PM for you?
Yeah, so I'm a group product manager at Zapier, and if you don't know it, Zapier is a workflow automation tool. Our mission is to make automation work for everybody. And, I've been here for 6.5 years. And I'll say that the last 2 years have just been an incredibly exciting time as Zapier. As we are, there's been a couple things happening that have given us a sort of fresh look and a fresh opportunity to solve a bunch of problems that have been kind of core to the product for a long time. Things like, how do we make automated workflows more reliable? How do we get a whole team involved and kind of solve for the bus problem where the person who built the workflows for the team kind of holds all the knowledge, and if they leave, nobody knows how it works. How do we help users get over the learning curve? Like, even with no code, things can be pretty technical and hard to learn. And the last 1-2 years, things that have been happening is, number one, we have been expanding our product offering. We've launched a new tables product for storing your data, an interfaces product for building forms and ways of viewing data on customer portals and things like that. We have a Canvas product for visualizing your entire workflow system, including offline processes. That's, I believe, in beta at the moment, as well as a new chatbox product that we're testing out. So we've been building all these new products. And it's been really, I work on the core team. So I manage a team of product managers who work on the teams that build our workflow editor and the runner that executes Zaps, which we call as our name for automated workflows. And so I'm still in the core world, but it's been really interesting sort of as these things have been coming online, what they've allowed us to sort of do within core and for the company as a whole. So that's been one big theme. The other big theme, of course, like everybody, is AI, which we've been doing a ton with, especially in the last year. And that has also helped kind of unlock some new solutions I'm excited to talk about.
Well, first of all, is Zapier consider themselves a multi-product company, or is this a bit of a new thing for you guys? And how many products you have, and what are you launching?
Yeah, so this is definitely a new act for us. Something that we've been thinking about for a while. And just to be clear, I don't work on any of these other products. I'm sitting over here sort of in Zapier Classic core land. But so I can share my personal perspective here. I think the big thing from where I stand is that all of these products came out of really insight, like a major single insight that our users were essentially building custom software for the business. Prior to the introduction of these products, we just had one thing. It was Zaps. You could build automated workflows, but those don't exist in a vacuum. Those are reading data from someplace, they're writing data somewhere else. People are interacting and doing sort of human in the loop steps, whether that's submitting a form or adding a reaction emoji in the Slack message that kicks off the next step. And so, there's sort of truly custom software was distributed across everywhere. And, with that, we would see over and over again all sorts of problems that would arise that were sort of out of our control because of how much customers, how much the other parts of the system played a role, right? And so kind of a classic example is, everybody uses Google Sheets to store some data in the workflow. And oftentimes it's not necessarily that they need it to be in Google Sheets because they're building complex formulas and spreadsheets. It's just the simple data store that they have available to them. And, but when you are doing that, what would happen is, number one, if you change, say, a column name on a sheet, that can break any of the Zaps that are reading or writing from it because something has changed, right? And so there's a sense of brittleness, and customers would, be really nervous about, they'd lock down the sheet, or they'd write a bunch of instructions like, do not touch
Change
this column.
any of this, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so, that was sort of an early sign. It's like, okay, it seems like there's something here. There's kind of a cow path to pave here. And, that, and among other things, led to work on our tables product, which is a automation first table. And so you can store data in it just like you would a sheet. But it, because we own it, because it's a core first class citizen, you can do all sorts of things like warn, show actually which columns are being used by which apps. And so if, you make a change, we could warn you that, hey, you could break something. It also makes it way easier to just like build off those apps. You can do things like really easy human in the loop approval flows, where if you want to have a step that in a workflow where you want to prompt a user to like review it and then approve or deny, you can just add a button in the table and that will continue the workflow. So, the tables product really allowed us to just, I think, design a much better experience that's more reliable, more intuitive, and solve for the things that people were already building with Zapier. But it was hard to figure out.
And
Yeah,
you're
just through other
solving
means,
the brittleness that customers were concerned about, right? The fact that they're using this other, table in Google. And then when that breaks, it would make, then what I think the problem was it would reflect back on your product and say, oh, your product isn't enterprise grade, it's not scalable. And so this way you found that way of like, well, how do I address that problem? Even though, yeah, Zap's product is working fine. It's just that the output is fine. If I control that output or the input at that point, I control my fate. So that's how you
Exactly. Yeah. And that sort of thing shows up all the time. And, customers don't have that distinction of, oh, this is a, third party problem or a Zapier problem. It's their apps aren't working. That's all that matters. And it shows up in other ways like rate limiting. Really, if you're running a lot of data through Google Sheet, very, very common to run into Google's rate limits on their APIs. And so that's something that we can address. The format of the data that's returned from an API. If you're trying to map the values, but the integration for whatever reason is just structured that data differently and it's unintuitive, they experience that as Zapier is hard to use. I can't figure out how to set this up when it's like the API engineers have sort of built it that way.
Wow. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is the typical, full vertical integration suite, right? Walled garden, all this stuff. All these things are there. And really, they're answers to the fact that you just don't necessarily have as much control over third parties or things that are just not under your control, right? And this is a great way to pull it all in. There's obviously other great things that come with it, bigger footprint that the customer has of your single contract. They don't have a contract with multiple parties, right? And many other things like stickiness and so on that come with it. Excellent. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What's the reaction from customers? Obviously, the Excel or Google Sheets, as it were, right, is an amazing tool, very easy to use and so on. I'm assuming the tables are great. And now that you guys have integrated across the board, I'm guessing favorable response, right, from customers across the board on that.
Definitely. Yeah. I don't think, I wouldn't expect many people are, not going to use Google Sheets anymore, right? There's still plenty of use cases, but if you need a table to, hold some data for a Zap, Zapier tables is a great option. One of the other things that's really beneficial, you sort of spoke to footprint, is, with tables and interfaces and Zaps, it's also like all under one roof. And so that kind of gets to that bus problem where, it would be really, if you ever looked in someone's account who had built a bunch of complex workflows, it's really hard to know, how are these things all connected? How do I get access to the sheet that it's using? What happens when that person leaves? How do we sort of maintain continuity? And again, having all the things together, we can, show all the sort of cross links within the product. And then on top of that, with this new product, Canvas, you can go even one step further and really visualize graphically how all the pieces fit together and also document the offline parts of the process. Or, sometimes there's automations that are happening in HubSpot as well. And you can visualize that. So you can now have a full bird's eye view of the entire process. And that's, I think, been the piece that people have really been appreciating.
One of the things we've done is, showcase that one, turn it on for them automatically. So it's, easy for them to, use it, it's accessible. And two, like you said, find ways to migrate them easy way. Here's a way to migrate where you don't put too much the ownership on the customer to move to the next level.
Totally.
Reducing barriers, make it easier, and then, highlight the value that you're providing. Okay, doing this, you now save all of those bugs that you're, hours and hours of bug fixing because you thought the table column was wrong. That's gone. So It's
Yeah.
an iterative process, but that is very important, getting them off something they're probably used to, and then especially B2B software, getting them comfortable with the next new thing, and your life will be better. And this is
Yeah.
how.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. And I will say, I guess, from the core product perspective, we haven't gotten here yet, but, we are thinking a lot about, okay, how do we make this how can we provide as many carrots as possible, right? How do we make this just the best in class integration experience? And, and ideally, the other integrations sort of follow suit and, everyone wins. But yeah, how can we make it as easy as possible to set up a trigger action using one of our other products? Just recently, earlier this year, we announced a big pricing update where, any tasks that you are used in any of our products are free. They don't count against your limit. That's actually a pretty big one. Like, it's cheaper. It's a big carrot.
Yeah, free is always good.
Yeah, free is always good. Yeah, that's right. As long as it doesn't cost you guys too much, right? Because that could be a thing, and we'll circle back to that when we talk to AI. But before we get to AI, other question I had for you is: so you're building all these different products as a group manager for the core. What are you finding that helps these other products stand up and live on their own, right? Because I would imagine that the philosophy for a multi-product strategy is for those products to stand alone, right? To operate by themselves, but also work better together. So what's kind of your perspective in how you enable, that entire suite to come together and or, operate separately if necessary?
Yeah, good question. Probably a couple things come to mind. One is, you can actually go back several years to some pretty significant technology decisions that we made where we refactored some big parts of our code base in specifically like the way that Zaps were stored as data. And this, I'm not an engineer, but my sense is that has significantly helped other products. No other products are necessarily building Zaps, but it makes it it's a much cleaner interface to interact with Zaps. So there's definitely there's an element of just the architecture and having the right architecture to support the right interfaces between products. Another thing is more of a sort of operating practice that we've been really trying to build here, which is that, while teams own their parts of the code base, other teams are invited to come and contribute. And so if you are on the tables or interfaces team and there's something that we could do in the editor the workflow editor that would really make it for a better experience, like come have a conversation. Sometimes it might be a thing that we can just fix, but other times it's a thing that, they are empowered to come and change themselves. So a lot of it, try to have really close collaboration between the teams and, we all very much recognize we're all on the same team, and the more that these things work better together, the better off our customers are, and the better off we are.
That's awesome. Yeah, break the silos. Yep, makes sense. Cool. All right, so I got two things: clean, open interfaces between products, right, so that they can interact easily, and then obviously work together wherever one can, even having engineers work in other products so that everybody understands kind of what it looks like behind the interface, right? What needs to happen so they understand why the interface perhaps is built that way or why it can't be built another way. Sometimes, there's this I wish your product did this, right? And there may be a reason why that doesn't happen. So having, being able to exchange engineers across really brings that understanding around. Awesome. Excellent.
Yeah, that collaboration is key. I mean, especially if because then you actually improve innovation, right? One, you get different minds thinking about it. Two, no one's waiting. Like, oh, I got to wait for team A to finish that before, we could do anything. And then it just, slows everything down, but you have everybody contributing. So that you have a really good process to be able to have engineers kind of be able to update and merge code into one where they're not breaking or ruining other people's projects. So that's impressive.
Yeah. That's something our engineering team really invested a lot of effort in last year or so, of just making that contribution process really streamlined, making it easy to stand up the environment and clear run book of like how to contribute, clear process guidelines, contribution guidelines. And we've been able to really expand the number of people who can contribute in core.
one of the things you mentioned earlier was just that Canvas product, which is actually trying to address a problem of, I've got multiple workflows. There's probably the one person that knows them really well. They named all the workflows and all the variables with their favorite pet names, right? And ice cream flavors. So nobody understands what's going on. So how do you understand, how all these workflows work? So it sounds like Canvas is a product you guys are building to help visualize the whole thing, whether it's Zaps or maybe an external process that's human driven, right? But now you can kind of help with documentation. Here's where I wanted to pivot, and you can tell me I'm off, but we also have a workflow product, and our customers build a ton of workflows to automate their processes that are special to them. And of course, not that we have that problem, and I'm sure you don't have it either, but then people get confused as to what everything works, right? And so, one of the things we're looking for is how to make it easy to explain this stuff. One way to do that, potentially, is, AI is actually kind of an interesting way to go and pull all complex things together and summarize things for you, right? It does a great job summarizing articles most of the time, right? And so this is where I wanted to pivot and see if, what are you guys thinking from an AI perspective? How could it help in a domain of workflows, of these apps and complex processes that customers have?
Totally. Yeah. Great question. Yeah. That is sort of explaining the workflow is definitely an application of AI that we have done some experimentation with. Last year, we added the ability to just generate an AI powered note on the Zap. Zaps have always had like a description field, and we added the ability to just like one click with AI, describe this. And then you can go and edit it and tweak and make sure it's accurate.
You got a baseline, right? So you don't have to start with a blank sheet of paper. Excellent.
Yep. So that's a big part of it. I'm not sure what all the Canvas product has been moving so fast that I'm not sure how if they're applying it in this way at all. The other big application for AI is really going the other direction and starting with natural language and then creating stuff from that.
Okay.
And that's, it's sort of two sides of the same coin, but that's been where we've been putting most of our energy in core, which has been really interesting. So we've built several different features where you can take natural language and either generate custom code for a code step in a Zap, take natural language and generate a formatter step if you need to reformat data. And then we're also working on, you can even just generate an entire Zap and just describe what you want it to do, and it will scaffold it out. You still have to go in and configure everything, but it's a way to sort of get over like an initial hump, or even if you know exactly what you're doing, it's honestly just faster. You can just give it really specific instructions and it'll go put 10 steps together for you that you can then go tweak and tune.
And would you kind of similar to like a co-pilot experience, being able to guide and then, slot in what would be the next tasks or next, job to do next after that?
Yep. And then, that's very much, we're doing a lot of work on that right now and testing various things, but finding that, it kind of goes back to, again, like what are the like core customer problems that we have to solve? Like not just like starting with like, hey, yeah, it's cool. How could we use it? But like, what are the things that have prevented people from getting value in the past? And, one of the big things that has always been around Zapier is what should I build? You need to just have an idea. And we've got teams who've been working on ways to, generate recommendations or take sort of a loose prompt and give something a little more specific or ask some questions to kind of build out that workflow. Sometimes you might have an idea of what you want to do, but you don't know how to translate that into a series of like triggers and actions. Like that's a very sort of like process oriented mind. Other times, you might maybe even later in the process where something goes wrong and you need help troubleshooting it. And so we've shipped a feature where if a Zap run hits an error, you can kind of summon AI to explain what you need to do to fix it and reference help docs and things like that. And so, there's all these sorts of problems where, we are, as a no code tool, we are sort of a thin layer between a whole bunch of technical complexity and people who aren't used to that. And we're finding that sort of with strategic applications of AI, you can like bridge that gap a little bit better.
Very interesting. So I'm hearing you're actually looking at AI, from a variety of angles, at variety of levels, from like the lowest where you're creating a component or a little bit of code, right, within a bigger picture, then actually potentially creating a full Zap, right? And then obviously to explain it backwards and forwards. So there's the generative aspect of it, but also explain it back, summarize it, whether it's an error or how it runs. Taking it even to a higher level, and something that I've been thinking about, like, do you think that as AI evolves and we kind of learn how, do you ever think that AI will become the new UX? Meaning that, natural language and conversations, clarifying questions, banter back and forth. Do you think that will ever become the UI experience that customers use?
I have a lot of hot takes here. I think
that's what I was hoping for.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You hit it. There's like a wonderful article I just read. I want to see if I can pull it up just so I can quote, credit the author, Amelia Wattenberger. And this article, really makes, like, I think, a compelling case for, some of the limitations that chat interfaces have. Text inputs have no affordances. Prompts are just a pile of context. The responses are isolated. Like, there's a bunch of classic UX problems that, GUIs were designed to solve from the command line. And so my cheers always are we just reinventing the command line? I think there's a really important role for chat. But I think it would be a mistake to try to completely eradicate any sort of form of UI. If I have to give me the option to click a button or type a sentence to do what that button would do, I would rather click the button, right?
Got it.
But if you have, like, if there's cases where you're not, sometimes it's the difference between clicking 30 buttons or writing a sentence. Like, yeah, sentence is going to be better. Or you're not exactly sure what to do, and you don't totally get the UI. The UI is complex. Like, chat can be just a much simpler sort of experience. And then I think there's a bunch of things you can do that kind of blend the two together, right? I've seen this in a number of products where, the chat isn't strictly text, but sometimes there will be buttons or different affordances or visualizations in that stream. And I think that's a really interesting way to go.
Well, I was going to say, like, we are, I'm still aligned from our chief design officer too, that, AI doesn't fix bad design, right? It can supplement it. It can make it better. But if you have a bad design, putting AI in front of it may not solve your problem. So it's always, focus to get that design right. As you said, sometimes easier, to click a button to give a customer, guiding them through kind of the flow of what your application is. But AI can supplement a bit. Go, oh, you're stuck. Do you need help? Or do you, you want to answer something quickly, or, is this, can you troubleshoot something for me? You enhance it. But if you already have a bad design in your UI, AI is not going to fix it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I remember what I was going to say. The other thing too is I think that you can really also, I think it's important to apply UX best practices to the chat interfaces. So, the notion of affordances, right? Like, what can I say? Like, that's the thing I always get hung up on. Like, what kinds of prompts can you even handle? Mm-hmm. Feedback, like real-time feedback. So, I think, like, show me what part of this you understood and how you understood it. Show me where you need more clarification. That's where I think, like, where I've been much more bullish on specifically like chat type UI versus just like zero shot, like enter text once, because if you can get the AI working right and kind of calibrate the sort of confidence level correctly so that it can like ask you clarifying questions rather than just trying to like magically guess what you want, then I think you're sort of like really onto something, and you can have that like, nice feedback loop and actually teach people how to use it right.
Yeah, for sure. To be honest, in my mind, I think we've got a ways to go, obviously. And I totally agree with you. I think it becomes another tool in the toolkit, not a replacement of. But in my mind, I'm kind of stuck on the spectrum, right, of being hopeful and excited that at one point we'll have this Star Trek, holodeck experience where you walk in and you have natural language conversation and you have physical interactions, right? So it's that hybrid combination of the best of everything.
Yep.
And then the call trees that we have with support folks, right? Where you're like, no, prompt not recognized. Would you like to go back to the main menu? Let me read that for you. And you're like, oh God, right? So that's the spectrum. I'm hoping we'll land, on the holodeck call tree,
Totally.
but we will see. We will see.
Totally. And no doubt, like with all product work, you got to start somewhere. And so it might feel like the call tree for a little bit, but that's the only way that you can ultimately get to the
Yeah.
more ambitious future.
The holodeck. Awesome. Very cool. Wonderful to hear what you're working on from an AI perspective. Any other things, or maybe, given that you've now engaged in this, maybe yourself or with your other product owners, any takeaways or things to watch out for or things to look forward to from an AI perspective, given the work you've done?
The big things I've definitely taken from the last year, spending a lot of time with AI, is, number one, you just got to get it into the hands of customers. Getting a diversity of inputs, seeing all the ways that people ask questions, seeing the kind of weird questions people ask is really important. That's the only way that you can, improve your models and your prompt engineering. Number two is, get creative about the UX here. I think, it's like we were just saying, really important role for chat, but you don't need to be blocked into a very specific chat paradigm. There's sometimes like AI you just summon it with a click of a button, like we have with our error troubleshooting stuff. You don't have to describe anything. We have all the context right there that you can send, click a button and get something back. And I guess maybe the final thing is just, these things, the stuff is moving at just a breakneck pace. And so the things that seemed impossible yesterday are now possible, and just keeping an open mind about what you can do with it and keeping up to date with the latest developments is a really key part.
That's awesome. That's really good. Awesome. So again, iterate early and often, right? Really integrate the AI with what you have. Don't replace it. Don't just go one way or the other. And then evolve and stay up to date with as quickly as it's changing, right? Because it is changing very quickly. You're right. Just, it used to be one shot. Now we have multi-shot, right? And clarifying questions and can come back to us and converse. And I'm sure more things will happen. We'll have context and memory and so on. One thing on number one, on the iteration, one of the things is obviously as a PM, right? In early days, you're encouraged to prototype, right? Fail early, whatever you want to call it, right? Just to get an idea. But I think there's something new that AI brings, because one of the things you mentioned was also to improve your models, right? So there's one thing about where do you fit AI? So you prototype that and figure out what's the best way that AI can help. But I think the other part of AI is that there's training, right? AI gets trained on certain models. And so to your point, putting then the feature in the hands of the users and getting more data as to how they use it can then refine the model and actually make your AI better, which you probably won't get just launching it out of the box. Is that right? Does that make sense?
Totally. And I might be mixing up some terms here, but whether it's training the model or improving your grounding or improving the prompt engineering, whatever it may be, there's all sorts of ways that you just things you do to improve the quality of the output, building evals so that you're making sure that certain kinds of questions are answered certain ways. But it's like you just need, as we all know from product work, users do weird things. Users just come in with all sorts of different expectations, and there's nowhere else more so than with it, especially text-based AI. Last point I just want to highlight here is just really how important it is to start with the user needs too, right? Like AI is a tool, and there's certainly a role for just sort of like greenfield thinking of like, okay, we've got this new tool. What could we do? But as much as you can also, and that then sort of opens up your mind of like what sorts of user problems can be handled with it. But it's also really, it is a great opportunity to go back and look at some of those problems that you might have been struggling with for a long time. And because of the limitations of, whether it's the typical UI or whatever, and AI, grounding your sort of AI approach in that, I think is really important.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, that's awesome. Absolutely appreciate the hot take, so to speak, on AI. That is great information and guidance. As we move to wrap up here, is there anything else that you'd want to maybe chat about? I think and bring up to our listeners? Maybe the fact that you're a group manager, anything about managing multiple PMs as sort of a parting thought.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So I've been managing a team of PMs for the last 3 years. And I was just thinking before this of, what are the kind of core tenets of kind of my management philosophy? And, this works for me. I don't know if it works for everyone, but the things that I find I try to do as a manager, number one is really getting into the details. I like to know details of like, what are they working on? What is how does the technology work? What are the users saying? The design decisions that they're making. And it's not about micromanaging, but I just find like as a manager, having that context helps me both be a better thought partner to them, helps me, manage performance, helps me coach them better, and just really support them better. And it's especially kind of relevant where, as a bit of an old timer here, I have a lot of context on past decisions or some of the weirder edge cases and limitations. And so I can just like bring that to the table. So it's definitely not like scrutinizing every little thing so much as like, it's just important to kind of understand what folks are doing and being able to be there for help when they need it. That then sort of in turn, I think really helps to build trust, which I think is like the second, like most important thing. Having the trust in your reports to know when to like delegate and defer to their expertise. There's always, I work with folks who are really, really smart and just have a level of depth and nuance in their product areas that like, as much as I try to get into the details, I'm never going to have. But the more that we can have those detailed conversations, the more I can really trust that they're on top of it. They know it. If they come to me and are asking like, hey, what should we prioritize between this and that? Sometimes I might have a strong opinion based on other, things I'm aware of. But other times it's a choice between two good options. And I need you to like lead with your expertise and I trust you to like make the right call. So sort of getting into the details helps build trust. I think it also helps build trust in the other direction where then when I'm giving feedback, they sort of know that I'm not just like sitting on a hill somewhere, like lobbing things over the fence, but I'm sort of, right there alongside. And then the last piece too is, we all know that like PMs come in many different shapes and with different strengths, and really finding those like unique superpowers of each person on your team and finding ways to like cultivate that, put them in positions to like stretch and grow on those areas. That's just something I really love to do and love to work with my folks on. And I have a friend, not in tech, who loves the phrase aces in their places. And that's a big thing of like how I approach my work. Like, all right, we need someone to like run a really technical, complex thing. I know who to call. And, I know the person for that. And so, great PMs can come in all shapes and sizes and different skill sets, and finding out like the, right one for each report and working with them to figure that out is just really rewarding.
Got it. So leverage their strengths, really, right? So there's aces in their places, as you say.
I like that.
All
one.
right.
That's a good one. We might steal that one.
Please do.
Wonderful. No, I really, really appreciate all this. We covered a lot of ground from multi-product strategy through AI, through managing multiple PMs. Really appreciate all the insights. I really enjoyed the talk.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation. And this was a super fun conversation. Would be happy to come back anytime.
Yeah, no, I think it was a great conversation with Noah. I mean, I think my takeaways, I love the story he had about, getting the insight from the customer. The whole story about where they had the Google Sheets and was making mistakes and they came up with a product to solve it and be able to bridge that gap. And so, they kind of saw a gap in what was needed and they were able to solve it and made a better product. So that was a good one.
Yep.
And I actually like the operating practice. I think that's something where like almost every PM and engineer hears that and go, oh yeah, you have other engineers can contribute to the code base and, make things better for everybody. You're not waiting for the other team to finish. So, the way they created that operating practice was pretty cool. What was some of your thoughts there, Lucas?
Yeah. No, a very good conversation. loved the amount of ground we covered, and actually were able to go to a level of detail where we went. So that was really awesome to get those insights. Just to comment on your point, yes, the whole Google Sheets thing. I mean, obviously, I love Google Sheets and Excel and everything like that. But honestly, I do work with folks whose English isn't the first language, and frequently they'll do a column name that potentially misspelled, and my OCD just kicks in, and I need to change it. I don't care how much it breaks things. It needs to be spelled right. So I can see that horror, right, of being able to control that and make sure that it all works well. Anyway, but no, I like the real great insights around. Well, we covered really three big things, right? The multi-product stuff we talked about, and particularly from Noah's perspective of being that core PM and how to enable and help the other products interact. And so clean APIs, interactions between the engineering team so they kind of understand what's behind the curtain. I think those were the two main takeaways there. Then we talked about AI, and we talked about, definitely there's now another thing to kind of try and work with as early as possible, right? Ship early and often. But the idea here is to train the model. Normally, you would just prototype quickly and see how users react and whether they use it correctly, right? But now the other part is, okay, well, now that you've maybe identified where I can help and you've prototyped that, now you also want to iterate on training the model. And, there's upsides to it, obviously, that the more you train, the more exact the model gets. The downside is we're dealing with large language models. So if I just ask a completely off the beat question that may not even be relevant to the product, and may actually not be that politically correct, right? Like the AI will just guess some stuff and right? What answers can you get? So that's how to keep it in the box and actually let AI learn to say, I don't know, as I think we all learn, right? So anyway, so it was about shipping early, experimenting, iterating early. Right? The other part was making sure that you integrate AI appropriately. You don't just, as I said, is AI the new UX paradigm? No, it isn't. It's just another tool in the toolbox. Don't use it to fix issues, right? Use it to complement good UX, as it were. And of course, we know we're very early in AI, so things are changing constantly. And so stay ahead of what's going on so that you can bring the best to the features that you're using.
No, I was going to say, and then one theme we hear a lot from the show of AI is, it's like, it's a great technology, but you still got to start with that, with what the user needs and the problem you're trying to solve, and not just do something because AI has it. So when you have the problem you're trying to solve and build a solution around that, using AI to complement it is where you become successful. So that's a constant theme we hear on these conversations.
Yeah. But it's great to hear also the details, right, of where Zapier, for example, and Noah and the other product owners have actually used AI and think there is value. And we saw the multiple levels from very lowest to the highest, right, to explaining things to debugging things. So that's really super interesting as well. And of course, we talked about managing PMs, and that is, you do have to go into the details. The devil's there, right, and that then allows you to talk with the PMs to report to you at the appropriate level. To understand how they're solving things. And I think, Noah was talking about trust, but it's also confidence, right? Like trust and confidence on both sides. From managing side, that you understand that you're dealing with folks who understand what the problem is and that they're making the right decisions, right? And vice versa. On the other side, that for those PMs, they understand that the manager actually understands them, what, issues or problems they're dealing with. And when they make the right calls, et cetera, they'll be recognized for it, right? And can comfortably come and ask for help. And it's not just, again, somebody that comes over the top and just says, no, you're doing a great job, do better, suck less, that sort of stuff.
That's right.
Which is not helpful.
Great.
Now, I love the conversation. Awesome insights. I really appreciate it, having Noah Manger on the show today. Hopefully we'll touch base with him at some point in the future and see how things are going. But as it is, that's it for the show today. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us next time for the next episode of Can I Speak to Your Product Manager?